Imagine waking up to the kind of political earthquake nobody thought possible. A moment so unprecedented, so strategically devastating, that analysts across North America are still trying to understand what they just witnessed. Because today, in Ottawa, something happened that changes the entire balance of power between Canada and the United States, and it happened in a way nobody predicted. Let me ask you this: what happens when the world's most polite country stops being polite? What happens when a nation long assumed to be America's quiet partner suddenly steps up and says, "We don't need you anymore"? And what happens when that message is delivered not with anger, not with threats, but with a calm, calculated confidence that leaves the room silent? Stay with me. Because what Prime Minister Mark Carney did today, during a press conference, one that was supposed to be just a budget announcement, will be studied for decades. Not for its economics. Not for its policy mechanics. But for what it reveals about power. About leverage. About the end of an era defined by Trump-style chaos politics. And if you think I'm exaggerating, watch what happens as we break down exactly how Carney dismantled Donald Trump's entire North American dominance strategy without raising his voice, without escalating tension, and most shockingly, without firing a single political shot. But before we dive deep, let me ask you, do you believe a smaller nation can truly stare down the world's most powerful country and walk away stronger? Do you think political unpredictability is a weapon or a weakness? And what happens when the country everyone underestimated suddenly becomes the country everyone watches? Let's find out. The press conference began with something deceptively simple. Carney stepped to the podium, calm, almost quiet. No bluster, no theatrics. And he opened with two words: "It's official." Now normally, those words announce a policy update, a fiscal change, a lukewarm statement that stays buried in the back pages of national news websites. But today, something felt different. His tone wasn't cautious. It wasn't diplomatic. It was final. Absolute. And the journalists in that room felt it immediately. Then it happened. Carney delivered the line that froze the room, stopped pens mid-scribble, and left even seasoned political analysts wide-eyed. Canada's future is no longer tied to Washington's decisions. Think about that for a moment. Canadian prime ministers don't talk like this. They imply. They hint. They dance around realities in ways that don't inconvenience anyone. But Carney didn't dance. He drew a line in the sand. And he dared Washington to respond. Months of tension with Trump's tariff threats, months of unpredictable trade swings, months of volatility created by early morning tweets, it all led to this. While the Trump team believed Canada remained boxed in by dependency, Carney was building something behind the scenes. Quietly. Methodically. Strategically. And today, he unveiled it. He didn't try to beat Trump at Trump's game. He simply made Trump's game irrelevant. Then he introduced the centerpiece of his transformation: Build Canada Homes. And sure, at the surface, it sounds like housing policy. But Carney wasn't announcing a construction project. He was declaring economic independence. Real independence, rooted in production, supply chains, workforce training, materials, and financing. He described a model that cuts building times by 50%, cuts costs by 20%, and cuts emissions by another 20%. Impressive numbers, yes, but that's not the real story. The real story is what those numbers represent: a housing industry that no longer needs American investment, American lumber, American steel, or American political approval. A housing industry that exists entirely on Canadian capability. And then Carney gave a history lesson, but not the kind you get from textbooks. It was a strategic reminder. A subtle repositioning of national identity. He said, "Our country was forged by Indigenous peoples and voyagers who built vast trading networks from coast to coast to coast before the Americans had even left St. Louis." That wasn't nostalgia. That was a challenge. A reminder that Canada existed, thrived, and built continental trade routes long before the United States became a superpower. And if Canada did it once without dependency, Canada can do it again. This was Carney weaponizing history, not to divide, but to inspire. Where Trump uses nationalism as a wedge, Carney used patriotism as a foundation. Then he dropped the policy bombshell: "Buy Canadian." But not as a slogan. Not as a political feel-good line. As a structural overhaul. as a legally embedded federal default. From now on, every dollar the Canadian government spends, housing, rail, defence, infrastructure, energy, defaults to Canadian suppliers. Not as an option. Not as a preference. As the system. American companies, supply chains, manufacturers that once relied on Canada as a guaranteed market. That pipeline just shut off. Here's the part Washington didn't anticipate. When a nation takes away dependency, it takes away leverage. Trump's strategy relied on threatening access to American markets. But if Canada isn't buying American goods, what exactly is Trump threatening to take away? Think about it. Leverage only exists when someone needs you. Carney just made sure Canada doesn't. But this is where it gets really interesting. Because Carney didn't run from the hard questions. A journalist asked about New Brunswick's forestry sector, 49 firms, $2 billion in exports, the vast majority going straight into American markets. Trump's administration is squeezing Canadian forestry hard. A perfect moment for panic. A perfect moment for the old politics of fear. But Carney didn't flinch. He acknowledged the numbers. He acknowledged the risk. And then he laid out the strategy with surgical precision. He said there are 3 paths forward. 1. Buy Canadian and build more at home. 2. Diversify globally and expand outside the US market. 3. Innovate and broaden what Canada does with forest products. None of these choices involve pleading with Washington. But then he added the line that changes everything: we negotiate with the Americans in parallel, but now from a position where we have other things they want. Do you see what that means? Canada isn't approaching negotiations as a dependent nation anymore. It's approaching negotiations as a nation with options. Options are leverage. Independence is leverage. And for the first time in modern North American politics, the United States might need Canada more than Canada needs the United States. Then came the quote destined to appear in history books: "This is a radically different US trade policy than anything we've seen in our lifetimes. It's radically different." He repeated the phrase because he wanted the world to hear what he wasn't outright saying. Trump changed the rules of the game, and Canada is done playing by the old ones. Carney then unveiled the scale of his investment plan and the room gasped. $1 trillion. Not a stimulus. Not a temporary boost. $1 trillion rewrite of Canada's economic foundation: housing, rail, clean energy, manufacturing, artificial intelligence, national capacity building. A system where Canadian jobs aren't dictated by American tariffs. A future where Canada can withstand political chaos across the border without flinching. He even addressed the forestry sector again, signaling something larger: Canada will create more jobs in more industries than Trump can threaten. We won't fight for scraps, he implied. We'll build our own table. And then he delivered the knockout line. The line that communicated his entire strategy in one breath: these are all things we don't have to ask permission for. We control them. We decide. It's our future. We are taking it. We are moving forward. He didn't say it loudly. He didn't say it with bravado. He said it like a man who already knows the outcome. And then he added one more comment, the comment that will haunt Washington strategists: we'll spend less time talking about what the Americans are doing, and more time building this great country. Translation: Trump is no longer the center of Canada's economic universe. No longer the unpredictable force affecting every decision. No longer the looming threat. Because you can't control a country that doesn't depend on you. This wasn't just Carney rejecting Trump's strategy. This was Carney forecasting the end of Trump's relevance to Canada. Not the end of Trump's political career. Not the end of Trump's public influence. The end of his leverage. The end of his ability to bully. The end of the power dynamic Washington took for granted for decades. Because power isn't about strength. It's about options. And today, Canada gained options Trump can't take away. Before today, Canada's strength was measured by its partnership with America. Carney just redefined Canadian strength as independence from America. And in doing so, he wrote the playbook for defeating chaos politics, not by escalating, not by matching unpredictability with unpredictability, but by making unpredictability irrelevant. The best part? Carney never attacked Trump personally. Never mocked him. Never engaged in political theatre. He simply built a future where Trump's tactics stopped working. So here's my question to you. Did we just witness the most important Canadian press conference in a generation? Did Mark Carney just redraw the map of North American power? And if Canada can do this, what country is next? Because this story, this shift in leverage, this shift in power, this shift in the entire geopolitical dynamic, is just beginning. And trust me, Washington felt it. If you found this breakdown powerful, if you want to follow every move Carney makes next, every reaction from Washington, every shift in this unfolding political transformation, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Because whether you support Carney's approach or question it, whether you love Trump or can't stand him, one thing is clear: North America just entered a new era, and you are witnessing it in real time. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is Canada's strategy brilliant? Risky? I want to know what you think. And if you've watched to the end, type Canada Rising in the comments so I know you're part of the community that sees what's really happening behind the headlines. More analysis coming soon. Stay tuned.